Good evening, good evening, good evening. This is the day the Lord has made. We will rejoice and be glad in it. Another day's journey. So glad about and so grateful that you're joining me for another Real Talk with Pastor Waller. I am so grateful that you have joined us to talk with leaders, young persons, people in the community about what's happening in Philadelphia. And while I recognize that I use those as two different categories, some young persons and leaders, well, today we've got one that fits in both categories. Is Brother Kellan White. He's both a leader and, yes, a young person here in the city of Philadelphia that is, to use the language of a Bob Bogle, a mover and a shaker, but he is also a brother beloved that cares about the city of Philadelphia and the region, and is very involved in the political. Now, you know me, I'm not here to tell you who to vote for, but I am here to tell you to vote. But I also want you to get a good look into the world of politics, and I believe Kellan is going to help us. So I'm not going to run down his pedigree. I do know that his grandfather was one of the great church leaders and political leaders of our city, and his father, you can't not know, John White Jr., but I'm going to let Kellan let you know about him, his pedigree, and also what he's doing today. So, Kellan, welcome to Real Talk with Pastor Waller.
Pastor, thank you so much for having me. I've listened to this before, and so it's great to finally be able to join you.
Excellent. Thank you so much. So, I've seen you in the rooms. And so you've been in different rooms for different reasons, but would you help people understand who Kellan White is and what it is that you do?
Yeah. So, I describe myself as a third generation public servant.
Okay.
I believe I live in the intersection of politics, government, and community engagement.
Okay.
And when I say that, I look at our community as a three-legged stool, right? If your government's not working, your community suffers. If the community isn't engaging in a way together, the community suffers. But if our politics isn't working, right, that negatively affects both ends. So I try to go in between the three and figure out where I can most be helpful. So I've ran campaigns. I was a senior advisor for Vice President Harris's presidential here. I was first deputy city controller. Now as a consultant, I work with nonprofits, helping them engage with stakeholders to help advance their agenda. So I do not lobby, but what I'll do is, you want to do something and you need city council's help, well, let me pull together some pastors or some youth leaders or business owners that share your passion so that they can voice their opinion as well. Because ultimately, our government, our politics, our community only works if we bring more people to the table. And I think that far too often people don't realize that they actually deserve a seat at the table, they're owed a seat at the table, and they end up silencing themselves, which ultimately just hurts our communities.
Got you. And thank you for helping me see that three-legged stool. I want you to know that whenever a good idea is told to a preacher, it's going to come up again, and I'm going to act like I came up with it. So, no, I will say, and as Kellan said, but when you're thinking about those three legs, where do you find that you are most effective, or where do you enjoy being the most in terms of addressing those issues?
So I enjoy working with the community the most.
Okay.
Right? Because you get to talk to real people who aren't media trained and polished and looking at you like, well, what should my solution be? Right? And not in a negative way. Like, a lot of elected officials do come to table with ideas, but they're not fully formed, and they want their advisors, their staff to help them go from point A to point B. But when you meet with a community leader, and I know that you are one, but you've also met with many, they will tell you exactly what they need to keep the ATVs from terrorizing the neighborhood or get people to clean up after the dog or fix, but they know what they want. And being able to meet with them and work with them to help them present their case in a way that actually gets heard. Because I do think people don't know how government works. They don't know how politics works. So they think they can complain. I'll use the stop and go shops as an example. So stop and go shops, if you live in Philadelphia, there are these corner stores that have been popping up everywhere that sell shots of liquor, right? So people call their city council person, they get mad. and the city council person can't really do much about it because of state law, right? So I know this because I'm friends with my council person. I called him mad, as a regular person would, and he could say to me, this is why I can't do anything about it. And because I understand how government works, I picked up the phone and called my state rep, right? Like, it was just that pivot. So teaching people, like, well, this is where you need to go. And what I find particularly frustrating with politics is the presidential election will always have the highest turnout, right? But the reality is, on your day-to-day in normal times, the president has very little to do with your day-to-day life.
Right.
Your trash doesn't get picked up on time, that's the mayor. You have a pothole, that's your state senator, state rep, governor, right? Your property tax is too high, that's city council, that's the mayor. Everything that you care about on a day-to-day basis is local government.
Right.
Yet people don't get engaged in it. And instead, the hyper-focus on the presidential, I'll vote in the presidential, I only vote in the presidential. But at the end of the day, again, in normal times, I ask people, well, what does the presidential, what's the effect on your life? And they really can't answer because we were at a point in history where whether the Democrat or Republican won, the effect was minimal. Now we're in a weird space where everything is changing, but still engaging in the local is so important. I think about Tim Kaine, senator for Virginia, who was Hillary Clinton's running mate. His first job was a city council member in Richmond. Then he became, well, not his first job, but his first elected job, city councilman in Richmond, then mayor of Richmond, then Congress, then governor, then senator, then almost vice president, right? It started with the local government, right? Very rarely do you have a president who steps into being the president after no public service. They all start local, and then in the suburban communities around Philadelphia, you have school boards, which are just critically important because they are dictating the curriculum, right? And I think that once we figure out how in a minority city like Philadelphia, like Detroit, like Milwaukee, that we can ratchet up turnout in the neighborhoods that need the most help, right? If we can get people to vote again, we will see big changes. I know, because I studied this stuff, because my grandfather worked on it, Wilson Good's re-election against Rizzo before I was born, turnout was like 78%.
That's right.
The mayor's race in 2023, right, the turnout was 38%. And that drop-off is a thing that we need to talk more about. Not that I believe by any means that the results of the race fundamentally change if more people vote. I think when more people vote, it sort of stays the same, right? It just sort of, the numbers get higher, but you don't necessarily all of a sudden have someone surge because there's a silent majority that like them. But when more people are engaged, I've done campaigns. When you talk to a candidate and they only have 5 hours and the 5 options are 4 options where people vote and one option where people don't vote.
That's right.
It is malpractice by me to send them to the place where no one votes, right? And so then you have these communities who feel like, well, they never talk to me. And it's a chicken and egg thing. And I think that we have to radically think about how do we break that cycle. And I think organizations like the church, community leaders, are where it is, not telling people to go vote for whoever, but telling them to flex their civic muscle and go vote, because that's what's going to ultimately matter in the end.
And thank you for that. And you're so right about Wilson Good. And a lot of that was driven by the fact that before he was Reverend Good, before he was he was Deacon Wilson Good at First Baptist Church Paschal over in Southwest Philadelphia. So when that happened, the churches gathered together and helped move in a particular direction. Well, and you're right, we've got to get people involved. What we're experiencing, I talked a couple of Sundays ago about sort of postmodern rejectionism. It's sort of this millennial malaise, I'll call it, with good reason. Meaning, if you're a millennial, you've grown up in an America that has failed. You've grown up in every sector of society. You've either seen mendacity, hypocrisy, or outright failure. So the will to want to give it the good old try and invest and believe in leadership, it's kind of harder for millennials than it is for me. I grew up in an America that worked for me. I was in the Army. They paid for my schooling. I've seen that thing. So, but you're young and you're involved. How do you have a conversation with younger people, or what do you see as the issue hindering the youth or younger participation in the political conversation?
So that's a question I get asked a lot.
Okay.
And what I have said to elected officials who ask me this question is, I know when you got elected. I know what you did to get elected. You were young. You were angry. You challenged the machine. You ran and you won, right? Fast forward to now, you're also falling into the same trap your predecessor did, telling young people to wait their turn, right? Telling young people well, not yet. It's not your turn yet to run.
Okay.
But whereas when, I'm not going to name names, but when they ran against the machine, right?
Yep.
And they won, they're not welcoming the same fight towards them. Now, to their credit, when they ran, they were community organizers who were on the streets doing the work and said, I don't see this person doing the work for my community, so I'm going to run. I don't see in the younger generation, younger millennials and Gen Z, this urge to really run for office. But they have opinions and they want to be heard and they believe in collective action, right? Yeah. And so for them, during the presidential, I got this a lot because I traveled all over the city and the state and talked to young people. The whole Israeli-Gaza conflict was a thing. It came up every single time, right? And I have very strong feelings about war generally, so I'm like in one camp because of that. But you talk to them, and then when they talk to strategists and older elected officials, they were like, you know what you're talking about. Rather than listen and hear them out and give a response that was thoughtful and embrace them, they were told to sit down and get in line because we're fighting evil. Now, what they saw is evil happening somewhere else, and they grew up in a time, I'm 39, so September 11th was my sophomore year of high school, right? I go to college, the Great Recession hits, right? None of us can really find a job, right? We come out, everything kind of gets stable, and we enter the time to have a family, buy a house, and COVID hits, right? If you're Gen Z, you missed your high school graduation or your college graduation. You've seen Donald Trump on the ballot, the only person you've ever seen on the ballot for president, right? Wow. You're watching a world collapsing around you. So, of course, you don't want to participate in politics, right? Especially when older people are telling you, well, your voice doesn't matter, right? Especially when older people are saying, well, you shouldn't run yet. You should wait your turn. And I am, I believe in radical democracy. And I am friends with a lot of elected officials, and they hate when I say this. I want everyone to get primaried all the time. Not because I think they should lose, but I think it's good for the experiment that is democracy. Okay. And I think that some of our best elected officials had to fight to keep their seat at some point, and that made them better. I look at Council President Johnson. I remember he had 2 primaries that were supposed to be tough. He routed them. He did a great job because he went to communities that people didn't think he would go to. Right. And his perspective changed because he talked to new people, right? He didn't flip-flop. He got new information and then came to a new conclusion. And now he's a great council president because he's learned from that experience. If you've never had a primary, if you get to just kind of walk into it, that is an accomplishment that you did a nice political move to get there. But just like if you're a wrestler or a basketball player or a football player and you aren't practicing and you aren't getting reps and when I wrestled, if you haven't been slammed on the mat in a long time and that first time you get slammed, the whole life flashes before your eyes and you're trying to figure out which way is up again, right? And so I'm over the moon about this congressional race. We're finally going to have a real I live in Brewerytown, and my wife, when we go vote, she always asks me who to vote for. She isn't, she's like, I'm not. Right. I don't participate in this thing. You tell me. Yeah. We haven't had a primary for a district seat. I've lived in Brewerytown since 2016. So when I moved there, Donna Bullock had just become the state rep. So from that time on, the only primary for a district seat I could vote in was Dwight Evans versus Alexander Hunt in that was at 2020 or whatever year that was, right? So this being a real primary with 2 state reps, a state senator, a doctor, and a whole host of like other people, I guess 2 doctors, a host of other people, that's exciting because people are talking about it. People are going to get up and go. The mayor's race had 38% turnout.
Yep.
If it was not an open primary with 8 candidates, whatever it ended up being, it would have been 28% turnout, right? Because all of a sudden, NBC 10's talking about it. The Inquirer was talking about it, right? People, you go to a barber shop, they're talking about it. So the more we get active, the more people campaign, the more people show up to a barber shop and say, hi, I'm State Senator so-and-so, and I'm running for re-election. Let me tell you why.
Yep.
And that guy in the barber shop hears that, well, actually, I helped pass funding to the state that helped keep you open during COVID. And the reason you need to vote for me is so stuff like that keeps happening. Then they become voters. We can't expect that because a commercial comes on TV that someone's going to vote, because no one watches TV anymore. And people, it's hard out here in the economy. They're working multiple jobs, and it's inconvenient for them to go vote. So we have to give them a real reason to do it.
Thank you for that. And I'm going to tell you, Kellan, you helped me because so let me give you another perspective. And I'm not saying that my perspective is right, but as a pastor who cares about community, what I didn't like about the mayoral race, that was a 9-dog race, is as a pastor of people, I watch good people that I love on all sides tear each other down and have, because we've seen the death of nuance and the death of civility. So I watch people become enemies over just politics. And so for me, I agree that democracy is robust discussion. I'm afraid of bigger primaries where you've got a ton of people, where in a political climate that is almost cutthroat, there's so much blood after it's over that losers are not just persons who lost an election, but they're down for the count, because in order to win, so much blood had to be shed. And my pastoral heart says, is there a way to get at the best candidate without there having to be a nuclear process? Does that make sense to you?
Oh, it's what I talk about all the time. That
okay.
So growing up in a political family, I was always hyper aware of the presidential, and I remember 2000 saying to my dad, "I really hope John McCain and Bill Bradley win the primary." And he's like, "Why?" And I'm like, "Well, because I think John McCain and Bill Bradley would both be good presidents, and I feel comfortable that if they both win, we're going to end up doing well." For those who don't know, neither one of them won. It was Al Gore and George W. Bush.
Right.
And I just remember watching that process play out. And even then, you're like, okay, George W. Bush, people have feelings about him, Al Gore, whatever. But the difference between them on policy was so minimal that you're really talking about the economy,
right,
and like what foreign wars we get engaged in. But for the most part, they were sort of in the same realm, right?
Yeah.
And we've made some progress, depending on your opinion, on social issues. But it's not that progress that I think is dividing us. I think people have learned it's easier to say, don't vote for him, than say, vote for me, right?
Right.
Right. It's easier for me to say, well, that person's a terrible human, so don't vote for them, than stand on my own 2 feet and say, this is why I'm credentialed, right? And I think about it that, like, I wrestled in high school. It is a team sport, but not a team sport, because you're out there by yourself.
By yourself, that's
and
right.
It doesn't matter how well you did in practice. You're by yourself, and it's 6 minutes, 2-minute rounds.
That's right.
And it's the longest 2 minutes of your life. And you can, in fact, be winning for 5 minutes and 56 seconds and make a mistake and be on your back and get pinned, right? And I'm someone who did it as a freshman, as a varsity, because of my weight, not because of my skill, right? So I was on my back a lot. And then by senior year, you learn from that because you're able to grow. I think our politic has gone away from being like one-on-one, let's fight on our credentials and show who's the best and the brightest, to, well, how can I tear you down and make you unacceptable, right? And I look back on the last election, And there was a whole lot of why one person was going to be bad for you and not enough of why this person's going to be good for you.
Yeah.
And that was felt when I talked to people in the African American community who were like, well, one, he gave me a check, and two, what are they going to do for me? Right. And you're like sitting there like, but he's terrible. And they're like, well, it didn't really affect me. And
he really didn't give you that check.
Right. And they didn't care because they have been generationally in poverty. So to them, no matter who the president is, they have struggled. But we have lost the thread in politics to talk about why we're the best and the most credentialed. And when you sit back and you think about your favorite elected officials, they're the ones that, it's not because their opponent was bad. You like them because they came from a community that you identified with. They did the work. They had credentials to stand on. And you support them and want them to be successful because of that. It's not because you thought the other side was evil. And once we get back to the belief that whatever side you vote for is the best for your community, for your state, for your country, we'll be okay. But that's not where we are right now, and we have to get back there. And I do believe we will. It's just going to be a very bumpy road till we get there.
And thank you for that. And you're going to be a part of that answer. So, you piqued my interest because I'm a wrestler as well. So you wrestle. Where'd you wrestle? What'd you wrestle? How far did you go with it?
So I was at Germantown Friends School.
Yep.
I started at, I guess, 110 when I was a freshman.
Yeah.
And then by senior year, I was 152.
Okay.
Which was great. Kind of have to cut weight.
Right.
And then I got a very nasty concussion senior year. So any dreams of going beyond that were squashed with the fact that when bright lights came on, my head started hurting.
Dizzy. Yep.
But, it's one of those things that it's a sport of discipline.
That's right.
You have to make weight as a teenager. It is hard.
That's right.
I have this memory of if you could be challenged at any time for your varsity spot. I had the flu. We were heading into the league season. Mm-hmm. My teammate challenged me, and I was so mad. And he beat me for like 5 minutes and 45 seconds. In that last 15 seconds, I realized, wait, if I lose this, I'm not on varsity anymore, and I end up winning. But that was it. You had to overcome. It is a sport where unless you were the best of the best, you always had to overcome. And a lot of those lessons, are still with me today. That 2 minutes is a very long time when you're in a fight.
Absolutely.
And we have to understand that there are many people whose lives are constantly in conflict or constantly in a fight, and asking them to take an hour to knock on a door or make a phone call or even stand in line to vote, that hour to them is money in their pocket, an opportunity to relax, not have their kids running around them, an opportunity to cook a meal, whatever it is. And we have to make it so worth it for them to do that, and not in a patronizing way, but in a way that really builds community.
Thank you for that. And he's telling the truth about wrestling. Have you ever thought about this? Every other sport, people play their sport. We don't play. You play football, you play basketball, you play baseball, but you don't play wrestling. You wrestle. We are basically the kings of all sports. And so that's that. But anyhow, I am encouraged to see your leadership. I am encouraged to see how you have handled. I've seen you in partisan spaces. I've also seen you live this out. We have been in moments where you represented someone that I was not interested in voting, but you also then have always been very respectful. And I think all of the camps would agree that if you're in the room is better for it. And I appreciate you coming here. What's at stake now? You talked about you're excited about the congressional race, but help somebody who hears, you know what, I haven't really had to think about the congressman because it's always either been Shaka or Dwight. Now I got to think about the congressman. From your perspective, why is this such an exciting and important time that we're going to be in this congressional discussion?
If you look at the history of this seat, you had Congressman Evans, Congressman Fattah, but it goes back to people like David P. Richardson. It goes back to legends who stood, Bill Gray, who stood for something, who have murals in the city, who were, are hailed as civil rights leaders because of the demographics of the district, right? It's the safest Democratic seat in the country, right? That's in part because it's majority African-American in the city of Philadelphia. So the person we send down there to D.C. should be a titan for our community. They should be someone who is in leadership for the Congressional Black Caucus who bring resources back to the district, but who's a voice standing up for what we believe in, right? And you don't get many opportunities to go out there and vote for that, right?
Yeah.
And we have people who have done work in the community, right, who are elected officials. And I think, the four major candidates all have their strengths, right? And basically what I've told people is all four of them are going to do the job of a congressman, right? We're not going to think that either one was a better legislator than the other one. But you have to think about what's important to you, whatever that is, and find the candidate who best shows that. Because when I turn to MSNBC, I see Madeline Dean all the time, Congressman Dean. I love Congresswoman Dean. She's standing up, representing Abington out there, showing everyone that. I want to see that with a black congressperson from Philadelphia showing everyone that Philly is still Philly.
Yeah.
And we are still the birthplace of America. We are still the place where all of these amazing things happen. And now we have this member of Congress who represents us in that way. Dwight was that, right? Congressman Fattah was that, right? And we deserve to continue that legacy. And this is exciting that we get that opportunity. And I'll say, I'm someone who likes to once I went primaried, it's every 2 years. So you should hold them accountable and keep having those conversations.
Thank you for that, man. This has been rich conversation. Is there anything that I didn't ask you that you think my listeners and those who have tuned in today need to hear either about you or about the state of politics that we're in?
I think the most important thing to remember about the state of politics that we're in is that we create the state of politics, that politics only exists because people are trying to earn your vote. So if candidates start doing tactics that you don't like and you don't appreciate, or saying things that you don't like and you don't appreciate, it doesn't matter what your committee person or your ward leader or your elected official or your brother or your pastor or your father says you should do in the vote. You should vote your heart and your conscience, meaning that if you don't think that the dirty tricks and the tearing down of someone else is good, then don't vote for the person who did that. Because the only thing that will change how our politics works is your voice. Because I'm in these rooms, if they look at the numbers and they're like, man, voting, you did really bad in this neighborhood, they will change their position to do better in your neighborhood. Your voice is important. And if you win by 100 votes or 1 vote, you still won. And every elected official knows that, and they want to earn that vote. But if you don't show up and use your voice, then they're not going to come and find you.
Thank you for that. This is Kellan White. He is a leader. He is helping us stay politically engaged. And yes, you need to stay tuned. This congressional race is going to be epic. We're going to have a lot of conversations about it. And I want to encourage you to get involved. Remember this, you'll often hear me say that political will is determined by voter turnout. If you live in an area of the city that doesn't show up well, then you could expect that those politicians are not going to pay as much attention. Whether that's right or wrong is not the issue. I promise you it's real. So if you want somebody to know that your house exists, show up at the polls. If you want somebody to know that that issue is in your community, show up at the polls. And so I want to thank you, Kellan, for being here. I'm going to keep you in my prayers. Thank you all for being a part of this experience. And I'm looking forward to seeing you in the morning. God bless you and God keep you is my prayer. Come on, let's pray. God, I thank you. I thank you for Brother Kellan, and I thank you for his unique place in political conversations. I thank you for how he has carried his various hats well. I thank you for how he has pressed the envelope of youth involvement, but also thank you for his integrity. And I pray that you protect him and keep him in this season. Then, Lord, we pray that you would use this season to help galvanize our community so that in this place you would get glory and it would be for our good. Now, God, as we go throughout the rest of this day, would that you go with us and stand by us until we meet again. We ask it in the matchless, marvelous, and majestic name of Jesus the Christ. And for his sake we do pray. Let us all say, amen. Amen. Listen, love you much. God bless you. God keep you is my prayer.